Things are happening now that are unlike anything that's ever happened before. It's not that there have been changes in the statute, it's been that every agency, every policy is being rewritten or weaponized, and it's happening at a pace that is beyond anything that's happened before in any administration.
The fact that they have had this funding cut has a huge impact on the immigrant community, especially when we're talking about the ramping up of ICE presence.
Tenemos esa necesidad de defender a los que son más desvalidos en estos momentos, especialmente los niños. Entonces, eso es importante. Y como inmigrantes, cada vez que hay situaciones de persecución, de opresión, de vulnerabilidad, ahí llegamos.
I don't have to remind people of my humanity. I shouldn't have to do that. If you can't see how this is stripping somebody like me of my humanity, I'm not holding a space for you.
Poder seguir haciéndolo porque lo necesitamos más que nunca. Y en el fondo es eso de que el miedo no nos paralice, que hay miedo sí lo hay, pero al mismo tiempo está la esperanza de algo mejor.
Communities across the country have felt a mass shift in immigration policies over the last year between ongoing cuts to aid programs and increased ICE deployment.
And in uncertain situations, it's often that these immigration rights groups are really rallying around their community. But with these funding cuts, here in West Michigan, immigrants and advocates alike are linking up to protect these very groups who have served them for years.
Cuando hay tiempos de opresión, cuando hay tiempos de miedo, tú necesitas estar con el otro, necesitas estar con más personas, necesitas reírte, necesitas cantar. Más que nunca es importante la poesía, más que nunca es importante la música, el arte. Y al mismo tiempo es como la cultura. Y eso en ese sentido está la comida. Detrás de cada comida significa que hay personas que la prepararon. Detrás de cada comida hay un campesino, una campesina que sembraron la tierra. Entonces todo va detrás. Y detrás de esa comida también viene el conocimiento ancestral. Porque si yo preparo hoy día empanadas, es de la manera que me enseñó mi mamá. Y el día viene de su abuela. Y lo mismo pasa con la tinga, con los tamales, las arepas, el arroz con gandules. Entonces eso es tan lindo de poder juntarse porque lo necesitas más que nunca. Más que nunca tú tienes que tener el sentido de estar. Y hoy día vengo con eso. Lo pensé mucho incluso qué ponerme. Está el sentido del cultrún, que es mapuche, que el sentido del cosmos, del universo. Es la armonía. Y hoy día he sentido eso. Que no solamente estoy yo sola, sino toda la gente que está detrás mío, de mis antepasados, pero también los antepasados de cada una de las personas que están aquí. Porque no solamente es Chile, es Perú, es Puerto Rico, es México, es Venezuela, todos están representados.
We are here to raise money for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center after the Trump administration cut federal funding for their unaccompanied minors program. So what that means is they no longer have funds to pay to represent children in immigration court for their cases.
some beautiful friends who I've known and worked with for almost 20 years at this point came to us and said, we want to do something to support the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center and make sure that we at MIRC are there for the community for the long term. And so they have put together this lovely evening, and it really has been a beautiful group effort.
What's the history of, I guess, that camaraderie and that partnership between MIRC and the immigrant refugee community?
Well, I mean, MIRC is a legal resource center for Michigan's immigrant communities, and so in so many ways, certainly we are present to our clients, our direct representation clients who we advocate for and who we represent in immigration and nationality cases. But then we really have three pillars of our advocacy. So it's that direct representation, as well as systemic advocacy and community engagement and education. And so one of the things we really try to do is when we see the struggles our clients are having, when we see the way the system doesn't work for them, or when we see the issues that people have, we do that systemic advocacy and we talk to community leaders. And so many of the people organizing the event tonight, some of them have been our clients, but many of them have worked in other helping professions, have worked in the schools, have been the people who have brought a client or a child to us and said, can you help us figure out what happened to their mom or dad? Or can you help us understand why all of a sudden this child who's ready to go into the workforce doesn't have a social security number even though they've lived here for so long? All the different things that come up for people, that's largely how I've met the members of this colectivo group, is through our clients, through our cases, through our advocacy through the years.
Well, specifically when we're talking about Michigan, they are, as far as I know, one of, if not the only nonprofit that represents clients in court. This work is incredibly tedious and it is incredibly taxing. And so a lot of nonprofits, because they have such limited resources as is, a lot of them stick with the family petition route. So filing for families overseas, renewing permanent residency card or citizenship. A lot of them do not represent immigrants in immigration court if they need it. And so MIRC being the only nonprofit, as far as I know, that even has offices across the state.
Every day, I look at our statewide mail and I get to see we got 6 work permits for our clients today. We got 4 green cards in the mail. We got naturalization oath ceremony notices. I love doing that and I get to see that. And to have the members of the colectivo say, we know that what we need to do right now is support MIRC, it tells me that they see it too. That they see it too when they see problems being resolved for individual clients, that they see it too when they want to know how to do stronger advocacy and use our social media or use our website to inform what they're doing for their community. The immigration system is just unbelievably difficult for people to navigate. And so we care not only about, well, certainly primarily about results for our individual clients, and also about trying to be a bridge between what the system is and what the community needs to exist within it.
The fact that they have had this funding cut and had to lay off a few of their workers has a huge impact on the immigrant community, especially when we're talking about the ramping up of ICE presence.
Immigration legal services are vital for everyone who's a non-citizen who is trying to get or maintain immigration status or improve their immigration status. And they're very, very costly. Until this spring, we had a certain amount of federal funding that supported our work. For example, we had a federal grant that allowed us to represent mentally incompetent people who are detained in immigration detention in the county jails. Obviously not someone who's in a position to hire a lawyer at their own expense. We had a federal grant that allowed us to represent children who are in federal immigration custody. That's typically going to be foster care or a group home in Michigan. And we had a federal grant to do this amazing informational help desk at the immigration court to just give people a little bit of information, a little bit of language access so that they could know how move forward in their own case unrepresented at the immigration court. All of that federal funding has been terminated. It's been a wild ride with litigation. Some of it is back for a time, but it's mostly somewhere between gone and very uncertain. And that obviously threatens our ability to provide the full range of services that we provide to the community. So we've actually already lost a lot of staff through attrition, even though we've overall mostly been able to maintain our programs. If there are not some significant changes in terms of the sustainability of federal or state or local dollars coming in for our programs, we will be a much smaller organization serving a much smaller number of clients, and we may have to withdraw from representing even some of the children we represent in deportation proceedings. And so just to bring that really into focus, the immigration law does not provide a right to a lawyer at government expense, even for children or even for people with mental competency issues or truly indigent people. And so, a child as young as truly an infant we've represented through this program would not have a lawyer and would have to go alone to immigration court. Right now, because of the programming we've been able to do, that rarely if ever happens in Michigan. That would trend more toward the norm if the children's federal dollars do not continue. It not only, I think, unsettles a fundamental sense of fairness that almost anyone would have, that a child would have to represent themselves in a complex legal proceeding against a government lawyer, but also we mostly win cases for our children. Most of the children we represent are eligible for green cards, are eligible for asylum, are eligible for relief. And most unrepresented children and unrepresented people generally do not win their cases in immigration court. And so it's not just that that day is a painful, terrifying, unfair day for a child. It's really the difference between a child having a full and stable life with an immigration benefit they're legally entitled to, and a child being deported or living without status for some indefinite period of time in the US. And as of Friday, it means that on their 18th birthday, the child is likely to go straight to adult immigration detention in one of our county jails. Friday, October 3rd, the government announced its intention to begin detaining almost all immigrant children in adult detention on their 18th birthday. Which would represent certainly a new practice for most children in Michigan. So when you think about what it means to not give a child a lawyer to pursue their legal claim during their age of minority, and then jail them for having failed to obtain immigration status by turning 18, that is the world that we are told we are now living in. So it is a really important time for us to look to other supporters and try to keep our services going for the greatest number of people possible.
Yo estoy muy conmovida con esa solidaridad, con ese sentido, porque cuando dijimos vamos a hacer esto, y no solamente por algo que es tan importante como Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, porque necesitamos esa ayuda legal más que nunca. Es al mismo tiempo estar juntos, y cuando dijimos estamos haciendo esto, fue pero precioso. O sea, nuestro amigo Miguel, que hizo el ají de gallina, él tomó el día libre ayer, y es lo que significa para una persona cuando uno trabaja y trabajas por hora, tomarte un día es mucho, y él lo hizo. También hubo personas que hicieron las arepas. Ayer el amor que hubo en relación de hacer las empanadas fue pero un turno de gente que iba, llegaba, y entre todos hicimos eso. Entonces eso es súper emocionante, y yo creo es porque tenemos esa necesidad de defender a los que son más desvalidos en estos momentos, especialmente los niños. Entonces eso es importante, y como inmigrantes, cada vez que hay situaciones de persecución, de opresión, de vulnerabilidad, ahí llegamos. Sí, yo soy una inmigrante que viene del final del mundo, de Chile, al fin del mundo. Y mi historia es más simple, es simple en el sentido de que fue el amor. Yo nunca pensé venir a Estados Unidos. Feliz con mi familia, ya tenía mi vida hecha, estaba estudiando y conocí al que ahora es mi marido. Y es más que nada eso, vine por una historia de amor. Al mismo tiempo, el hecho de ser inmigrante y el que estés tú sola, porque es diferente yo criar mis hijas allá en Chile que criarlas acá. Entonces nuestra familia no está aquí en Michigan, la familia de mi esposo está en Chicago. Entonces lo que generamos es familia, generamos amigos y amigas con los que hemos criado nuestras hijas, nuestros hijos. Y siempre estamos como juntas y juntos. Y eso ha sido un caminar que aprendimos uno de los otros, no solamente entre los chilenos, hay amigos y amigas de todos lados. Entonces mi camino ha sido de mucho privilegio. Pero al mismo tiempo, como trabajadora social, he trabajado mucho también con la comunidad. Y siempre he aprendido tanto de ello. Es como, hay ciertas personas a las que he trabajado con ellos y ahora son líderes y me encanta seguirlo.
When I first immigrated to the United States, I came from Australia as an Australian citizen. So my immigration story is in August or September 92, I was 4 and we immigrated from Peru to Sydney, Australia, specifically because they had a permanent residency program for STEM professions. My mom applied, told my dad nothing. She got the residency, and at that time, Peru was undergoing a lot of socioeconomic turmoil. There was a coup d'etat, there was a golpe de Estado, and we just kind of got a military dictatorship and hyperinflation and all of those things. So my mom applied, got it, and basically said, it's here if we want it. What do you say? We stayed in Australia from 92 to about early 97. We became citizens in 96. We fully had no intention on immigrating. My dad had no upward mobility and he was traveling a lot to different areas of the world because he was good at what he was doing. He was an industrial engineer, and so they would kind of call him to repair machines. And so in, I guess it was January of 97, he got recruited to work in Dallas. And so we immigrated from Australia to Dallas. By 2003, my dad was starting to shift priorities, had reached out to a contact here in Grand Rapids, and that's how we moved up here. And we actually became US citizens. I became a US citizen in March 2009. My dad got his work visa because we technically applied as Australian citizens. That's how we were able to supersede a line, or there was a shorter line to leave Australia. There's a lot of like circumstances like that when we're looking at immigration where it's like, okay, how long is the line for your country? After I graduated with my undergrad, it was 2010. Recession was hitting hard. There were very bleak job outcomes, and I was able to apply for the Diocese of Grand Rapids, which is essentially the Catholic Church, specifically Hispanic ministry. During my first month there, the Catholic Charities program that had an immigration realm shut down. And a response to that was opening up a new office. I became the administrative assistant there. And so I worked with an amazing group of not only BIA accredited individuals, but also staff attorneys. And that's when I kind of realized, like, I don't know the process that got me here. I don't know the process that's keeping me here. But one thing that I can say is I remember sitting in offices. I remember playing with broken toys. So there was a lot of kids that were coming in, and because I was administrative assistant, I was kind of interacting with them quite a bit. During the time that I was working at immigration, we also, DACA happened.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people.
And that was another onslaught of different emotions of like, okay, these young people would really have no benefit. Like they wouldn't be able to work. They didn't have access to driver's license. And so if you are having to wait 2 hours to get anywhere in the city, having a driver's license is a godsend.
Es de mucho miedo. Y uno de los miedos que yo tuve cuando niña, tenía miedo que se llevaran a mi papá, viviendo en una dictadura militar y sabiendo que mi papá era una persona que estaba disidente. Hubo momentos en que la policía llevaba a las personas y las desaparecieron. Entonces, en este momento yo veo casi lo mismo, en el sentido de las familias que se separan. El dolor de los niños. Y ese dolor de los niños me rompe el corazón. Y en el sentido de inmigración, yo diría que la gran mayoría de las personas no se va de un lado a otro solamente porque se te ocurrió un día irte. Siempre hay una causa, siempre hay razones. Y las razones muchas veces pueden ser persecución, puede haber problemas climáticos, pueden haber problemas políticos, puedes sentirte no segura o no seguro. Y ahí decidiste partir y muchas veces lo vas con tus hijos. Entonces, es por eso y más importante que nunca tener organizaciones como Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, porque siempre es importante mantener el Estado de Derecho, que las personas se respeten a todas las personas se les respeten los derechos. Que no lleguen y te tomen y después no sepas dónde estás. Es lo peor que puede pasarle a alguien. Y eso es lo que está viviendo. Y en el fondo es cómo podemos proteger, sobre todo para mí, cómo podemos proteger a nuestros niños y a nuestras niñas. Cómo poder tenerlo y poder, en el fondo, que no sientan ese miedo. Y eso es lo que me mueve. El colectivo somos un grupo de amigos y amigas y nos habíamos juntado a hacer algo parecido antes y en este caso tan importante como apoyar a MIRC no solamente es por MIRC, es por la comunidad, también es para nosotros. Necesitamos hacer esto y me dicen que en el fondo yo los llamo, los convoco, pero en el fondo no puedo llamar y convocar, pero sin que ellos digan sí, no pasa nada. Entonces es súper importante tener eso de que podemos hacer algo. Y lo otro es, como hablaba inicialmente, siempre es importante, entre medio del miedo, una de las cosas más importantes, además del arte, la poesía, la belleza, es la risa. Y con todo este grupo nos reímos mucho. Y yo encuentro que más importante que nunca es burlarse del poder. Es importante porque en el fondo, cuando te burlas del poder, lo haces más pequeño. Y en el fondo te puedes mover y habitualmente tú tienes esa risa con tus amigos, con tus amigas, con tu familia. Y siempre cuando uno está con la familia, y para mí mi familia es súper importante. O sea, si estoy haciendo yo esto aquí es porque estoy pensando en cómo mi abuela iba y salía a ayudar a las otras personas. Mi mamá también. Mi papá, tremendo organizador social. Y él fue lo primero que pensé mucho en mi papá, porque murió. En el fondo fue perseguido, queda con 6 hijos sin trabajo y sin poder encontrar trabajo a los 49 años. Y siguió luchando y siguió organizándose con otras personas. Y para mí dijo, si él pudo hacerlo y luchó por 18 años, yo puedo hacer esto.
There's a lot of immigrants out in community that because they came through our doors, I see their names written in my handwriting or in another attorney's handwriting. And then I see their name in print and they're doing amazing things. They're running departments. They're like doing all of this initiative work. They're introducing like state representatives at different rallies and at different events because of just the benefit of having them present in community and not living in the shadows of it all. And it's just so overwhelming. Like I really am just like, I just want to tell them like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I want to say that you are not alone. It's only by miracle that I'm able to be safe like this. I don't want to wait until they're coming for me, because they're coming for me. I don't want you to be used as a scapegoat. And so if I could say anything, I can just say, estoy contigo. And I will be the loudest voice in the room when it comes to protecting you, because you deserve it, because I deserve it, because they deserve it.
Support for Mutually Inclusive is provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Fry Foundation, and by viewers like you.